Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge and our playthrough series on the last Blitzkrieg campaign scenario. Last time out, we saw the Americans activate the last of their formations, which means in this episode, it'll be an all-German show. They have 10 formations remaining to activate, so we anticipate wrapping up the 16 December turn here with this particular episode. And without wasting any more time, let's just get right into the action. I think we're going to go ahead and start in the southern sector here. The Germans have 4 formations in the southern half that have yet to activate, and 6 formations further up here in the north. And we will probably end up just starting down here with the 352nd Volksgrenadier and working our way to the north. We're going to start with the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division down here, right at the confluence of the Sauer and the Our rivers. And even though the Americans have completed all of their formation activations, activation sequence for the Germans does still matter, so you do want to pay attention to that. Some instances it's not going to matter that much, and in this case it doesn't really matter quite where we start, but when you get formations, neighboring formations, or formations that are operating in the same general vicinity as one another, you are going to want to pay attention to how you are activating those units. Here we'll start in the south. We only have 4 formations in the southern half of the map, and we'll be able to activate those fairly in kind of a 1-2-3 sequence, and then we'll switch over to the northern sector where they have a few more formations, but the order in which they activate is something that the Germans are going to have to watch out for. That said, the 352nd is a slightly better formation than the 276th and the 212th that are on its left flank. It has a few action rating 3 units. It does have red support, but again, this is not a formation that is really going to hit hard and drive the Americans before them. And for now, at least initially in the battle, the plan for the 352nd is a fairly limited one. We're going to give them an AO stretching from initially Biggelbach here out to just west of Bettendorf. The road you see here, this road is going to belong to the 5th Fallschirmjäger unit. 5th Fallschirmjäger is a little bit bigger unit, and their task is going to come across and then swing down. They'll be charged with taking Diekirch initially, as well as points to the west. For now, 352nd just wants to get across, and they're basically going to form a link between the 276th on their left and the 5th Fallschirmjäger on their right. They only have a single American battalion in their area of operations. Hopefully they will be able to dispatch them quickly and then assist their neighboring formations as best they can. So with not a big activation planned, first thing we will activate them by flipping over the headquarters. You can see the trains are located right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes away at optimal distance. However, as with just about everything else on the German side, they are stacked with the 5th Fallschirmjäger trains next door, so they are crossing the streams. Now, this is something we will be able to correct fairly easily, because in their initial activation, we are going to shift the trains over back to the east here to untangle this mess along this road here and allow both the divisions to a better chance to operate more freely. That said, we are not doing any prepared defense for them as yet, so that brings us to the snafu roll. The 352nd is fatigue level 0. They are not coordinated or mixed. They will get +1 for the game specific. They'll get +1 for optimal distance. And then a -1 will bring it down to a net +1 for crossing the streams up here. So a +1 to the snafu roll for 352nd. They roll a 7, which is enough to give them a full activation, and a couple of objective markers, which they will place because we are planning on attacking Bettendorf this activation. Now that that's placed, we'll go ahead and start moving our units, and eventually the 352nd may press south of the river here. However, eventually, once the Americans start to show up in force, this river line is going to be the main line of resistance for the Germans in holding the Americans in the south in check. But prior to that, we will consider deploying further southward and slowly fall back and give ground. With that in mind, this track that you see here is assigned to the 352nd. It's not in the 276 zone. 276 is going to be south of this track. So we're going to bring the ersatz battalion down here for a half, cross the river for 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and they'll proceed out to the west here along the rail tracks. Now, we're going to... Who do we want to make that attack? Well, he's gonna come across here for 2, up to here for 3. And we'll go ahead and have the 2nd Battalion cross here for 2 and move in here for 4, and then they will make the attack. The 352nd has no additional artillery assets, so they'll have to rely on just the 3 organic artillery points that they have. And the battalion, this is of the 109th Regiment. It's the 3rd Battalion in Bettendorf. They are in prepared defense and they are supported. So again, the units, as they cross the river, they will drop their red support, unfortunately, until the bridge here at Gentingen is open next turn. So for the attack, we will spend let's see, do we want to try to barrage these guys? You know what? It'll, I don't like the odds of them successfully attacking and pushing them out of Bettendorf, which is actually the goal. But if we do a suppression barrage with the attack, I think the best case scenario, we're looking at killing maybe 1 step of this battalion. By dropping this 3-point destruction barrage on them, we're pretty much guaranteeing taking at least 1 loss and possibly 2 step losses from this battalion, but we will start to wear down the American battalion more quickly. So let's go ahead and make that roll. It's a 4, 5, or 6 since they are in terrain. And there's a 6 and a 3, and the second shot is a 1. So only 1 step loss to the Americans. Now for the actual attack, it's going to be an action rating 2. They have no support. There is a double objective zone, which makes it a 3, and they are being assisted by the 1st Battalion, which brings them up to a 4. The Americans, on the other hand, have a 4 action rating. They are supported, making it a 5. They're in prepared defense 6, and terrain makes it a 7. 7 from 4 is a -3 to the combat roll. Germans roll an 8, -3 is a 5, which is just what they need to avoid the 2-step loss. So in the end, it turned into an exchange, 1 step loss for the 2nd Battalion, 916th Grenadier Regiment, and 1 battalion for the Americans. Moving onwards, we're going to continue getting the division across the river here. That's 2.5. We're going to come down here for 3.5. Now they could have continued down the track onto the road here, but as I just previously mentioned, this road does not belong to the 352nd. It belongs to the 5th Fallstream Jager, and we want to avoid mixing and coordinating our units as much as possible. Any kind of snafu, negative snafu modifier is something that you should really strive to avoid. And that can require some discipline when maneuvering and fighting your individual battalions. One of the mistakes I see with newer players to this system is that they've been trained by all of the other operational level games out there in the past that they've played to really just kind of focus on maximizing their individual units. How far can I move them? Can I move them that far? Well, I'm going to move him that far. Where can I attack? If you do that in BCS, you are very likely to end up crossing and mixing the blobs of the formations, which will saddle you with a coordination modifier for 1. And if they end their turn that way, you're also going to have a mixed negative modifier as well. So what you really have to do when approaching BCS is kind of think big. Think in terms of whole formations rather than the individual parts that make up that formation. Anytime you start an activation for a formation, you should have an idea of the path the formation is going to advance upon, as well as the objectives that you're looking to accomplish in this particular objective. And you'll want to give some thought down the road as well. Not just future activations for the formation that you're currently working on, but also the neighboring formations, to make sure that you don't have 2 or 3 formations that are going to end up crossing each other's paths as they're advancing a few turns down the road. So it takes a little getting used to. It takes a fair amount of discipline when maneuvering your units to really kind of stay within the task that you initially assign them at the start of that activation. So knowing the capabilities of the 352nd, also knowing what I have with the 5th Fallschirmjäger yet to go and what I want to accomplish, again, clearing the Americans from the north bank of the Saar River here, and how I'm going to do that on a multi-formation level is something that you kind of have to keep in mind if you're going to get the most out of your forces in a BCS game. And it's particularly true in last Blitzkrieg with the German start position, because they've got so many formations crammed right on top of one another that some mixing is going to be unavoidable. But again, keeping that to an absolute minimum should be first and foremost in your mind. That said, let's see what we've got left here to move up in the division. We will get, that's a half, that's 1.5. And 3.5, we'll bring them in here. You'll also find that keeping your formations fairly compact is going to make it a little easier to avoid mixing and coordinating. We'll get him across the river. I think right now we're just trying to get everybody as far across the river as we can. Now the headquarters is going to come, let's see, I think we're going to bring the headquarters here. They only have a command radius of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which will put us just east of DEC here. They will get a bridge that opens tomorrow. However, it's a track, not a primary or secondary road, which means it's useful for getting units and support across the river, but it's going to be less useful to trace supply across. The MSR from the headquarters to the combat trains can use tracks, but you're going to suffer a negative snafu modifier for that. And then from the trains back to the edge of the map supply source, it must use either a primary or secondary road. So placing the HQ on the other side of the river with only a bridge to some tracks is not ideal. And there aren't a whole lot of bridges along here that are on secondary and primary roads. So that's going to be a consideration, not for the immediate future, but as the Germans start to expand to the west, that's something they're going to need to watch and be aware of. Now, that's it for the activation. We do need to roll for, actually it's not. I did say I wanted to move the combat trains and redeploy them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes back. That will assure us of our optimal distance. It also untangles the confusion here with the 5th Fallschirmjäger, which means the 5th Fallschirmjäger will not suffer that crossing the streams modifier when they go to activate, giving them a better chance to get a full activation. Now that that's done, I will roll for fatigue. We made 1 attack, so that'll be a 3 or less to increase their fatigue level. And they rolled a 5, so no increase in fatigue level. And I think they are going to try to get a second activation that's going to require a 5 or 6. And they get a 6. Let me go ahead and I'm going to first record the update the loss charts for these 2 units from the prior combat, and then we'll go ahead and pick up with the snafu roll for the second activation. Picking back up now with the second activation for the 352nd Volksgrenadier. We are at the snafu roll. They have still a 0 fatigue level. They're not coordinated or mixed. They get +1 for the game specific. They'll get +1 for optimal distance to bring it up to +2. However, the trains are ghosted, which is going to bring it back down to a +1, and that will do it. So +1 for the snafu roll. And they rolled a 6, +1 is a 7, which is just what they needed to get that full activation. They will continue to put pressure on the Americans at Bettendorf here by placing both of their objective markers, and they will have 3 artillery points for this activation. Now, I think what we're going to do first, and we talked about giving this road to the 5th Fallstream Jager, and I think we're going to stick with that. So we really want to keep this 352nd east of that road, again, to avoid mixing the blobs. But the Ersatz battalion south of the river is going to continue to push here. That's 1. I'm going to go 1.5, 2.5. I think they will settle in there. We've got, these guys are going to go 1 here and then 2, 3 back into there to again isolate the Americans here in Bettendorf, and bring this guy across. He's going to go now with the Zauer. From here on out, they do not get the free crossing, plus it's a second activation, so no rubber boats here, which means it's going to be a +2 movement point cost. It's going to be 3, and then down the track here is 4. Bring this battalion south here for 4, and push this Fusilier company over for, that's going to be 4, isn't it? That is. All right. And the Pioneers will push south here for 2. Now, I think the only thing left to do is to make another attack here on the Americans, and we're going to go ahead and try making a normal attack. We're just going to use 1 artillery point for suppression barrage. The attacking unit is going to be the 2nd Battalion of the 915th, located here, and will be assisted by the 2nd of the 916th. The attacking modifier to action rating 3. They are not supported, but they do have the double objective zone, which makes it 4. They get suppression barrage is 5/6, and assisted is a 7 for the attackers. The defenders are going to be 4 for their action rating, 5 for being supported, 6 for prepared defense, and 7 for terrain. So a net +0 on the attack roll. If they roll an 11 or 12, they will actually manage to push the Americans out of there. Anything less than that, they'll need a 7 to at least inflict a step loss on them. And not a bad roll, but not quite good enough. It's going to be a 9. That is going to be a 1 attacker loss, 1 defender loss. So 1 step loss for 2nd of the 915th, and 1 more for the Americans there in Bettendorf. And we will go ahead and flip our trains back over, and that's going to do it for this second activation. Rolling for fatigue, a 3 or less to increase the fatigue level. They rolled a 1, so they will increase to fatigue level 1, and that's going to do it for the 352nd Volksgrenadier on 16 December. Next up is the 5th Fallstream Jager Division. They are immediately to the north of the 352nd. And we talked a little bit about them in the 352nd's activation. What you see here with the division, they have one bridge in their sector here at Vianden. However, it will not be available until tomorrow. The 14th Fallstream Jager Regiment is deployed on the right flank of the division. They are going to be attacking across the river westwards through Weiler along this track to Hoscheid on the highway here, at which point they will either turn south, come down the highway to seize Edelbrook down here at the bottom of the screen, or depending upon how the situation is developing, they may continue westward and shield the left flank of the westward drive of the 26th Volksgrenadier, which is their neighboring formation on their right flank. Now the rest of the division, about 2 regiments worth, is located here. They're going to cross around Vianden and then drive south along this road with the objective of capturing Diekirch over the next day or two. So depending upon how things go, ideally they'd like to be in Diekirch by evening on the 16th, but that will be up to the gods of war and the dice. Their combat train is on the map, and we have a complete MSR. It's also at optimal distance. We are not going into a prepared defense, so we're going to make our snafu roll now. They have a fatigue of 0. They are not mixed or coordinated. They have +1 for the game-specific DRM right now, and they have optimal distance to the trains. So that's a +2 for their snafu roll. And they rolled an 8, modified to a 10. That's going to be a full activation for them. Now the question that we have to think about is, what are we going to do with our 2 objective markers? And while we're thinking about that, I will go ahead and place their artillery marker. They have 3 organic points and no additional artillery assets assigned. They do have red support in the form of a Stug battalion, and they also have a battalion of 88 millimeter guns, which is a standoff support, which will, I think, come in handy, especially in the as the campaign progresses and the Americans start attacking from the south. Now, they have 2 units initially in their sector that they're going to have to deal with. One is a small company. This is I Company, 3rd Battalion of the 110th, which is headquartered up here in Clairvaux. And then they have the 2nd Battalion of the 109th, both regiments part of the 28th Infantry Division. I think what we're going to do is, we're going to go ahead and split our objective markers to make both attacks. We're probably going to deal with the company out here with a destruction barrage, and then we're probably not going to do better than kill a step here with the Americans. So we'll see how this goes. But let's start off with the right flank units, and we're going to get I'll send these guys here for 2, 3, 4, and they're going to cross here 3.5, 4, and the 2nd Battalion of the 14th Fallschirm Jager is going to make the attack here on I Company. We are going to spend, talked about it, we're going to spend all 3 points in a destruction barrage, although, you know what, we're going to leave 1. We're only going to spend 2 points, and we're going to leave 1 for a suppression down here on the American battalion. So we've got 2 shots. Gonna have to get lucky to get the company with both of these. Here we go. And that's not what we were looking for. 2 misses, which means we're moving on to resolving the combat, which is not going to be pretty at this point. So the Fallschirm Jagers have an action rating of 2. They are not supported. They do not have a double objective zone. They have no artillery, but they are assisted. So that's going to give them a total of 3. The American company has an action rating of 4. They are supported for 5. They are in prepared defense for 6. Oh, hold on, let me check that. No, they're not in prepared defense because they're beyond the command radius of their HQ. So no prepared defense for I Company. but they are supported and they are in terrain. So that's going to give them a 6. 3 minus 6 is a -3 to the attack table. It's a good roll. If they had had that for their artillery, this would be a successful attack. However, that -3 is just enough. It gives it a 6, which is going to be an A1 with no loss to the defenders. So a very poor showing, although not entirely unexpected from AR2 troops there. I'm going to go ahead and record the step losses for the 2nd Battalion here, and then we will pick back up with the rest of the activation. Well, that's a good example of how things can go very poorly for the Germans, even on the initial day of the attack. Let's see what we're going to do here. We'll have this battalion come across here for 2.5, 3, and 4. And I think that we'll have him 2, 3, 4. You can see both of these bridges will open tomorrow. This one, however, is tracks, so the important one is on the secondary road here at Vianden. All right, so we'll have 1, 2. We'll move here and here. It's going to be the 2nd Battalion of the 13th Fallstream Regiment will make an attack on the battalion at Fuhren. And they're going to spend their last artillery point to make a suppression barrage. So it's going to be actual rating 2. They're not supported. Double objective zone, no. They have 3, 4 for artillery, 5 for the assist. So 5 on the attacking side, and it's going to be 4. I think this is 6. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 4 supported is 5. Prepared defense is 6. Terrain is 7. So 5 minus 7, it's a -2 attack. They roll an 8. The 8 is again just missed being able to inflict a step loss on the American battalion here. So it's merely 1 step loss to the 2nd Battalion of the 13th Fallschirmjäger. And you can see the Fallschirmjäger off to a less than great start here. We're going to go ahead and flip over the motorized guys, have them dismount, move up 1, 2, 3. He'll come in for 4. And, boy, you know what? That's, yeah, all right. And we will keep pressing forward. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to bring the headquarters, one anticipation of those bridges opening. Actually, we're going to put them here. 1, 2. Yep. And we'll get the Pioneers to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to do it for the first activation for 5th Fallschirmjäger. They were able to get around the thinly spread Americans here, but whenever they came into contact with the Americans, they came off a lot worse than the defenders. With the 2 attacks, the fatigue check is a 3 or less. I rolled a 2, so things going definitely not very well for the Fallschirmjäger thus far. Let's see if they can get a second activation. They're going to need a 5 or 6. And with a 3, that is going to do it for the Fallschirmjäger for this turn. It was a very disappointing first turn for the Fallschirmjäger here. We'll see maybe if they can do a little bit better once they get their support back and are able to use their Stugs in the attacks. So that's it for this activation. moving on to the next. Moving north from 5th Fallstream Jager, we're going to activate 26th Volksgrenadier next. Now this is, along with the 12th Volksgrenadier, the two best infantry formations that the Germans have, at least at the start of the campaign. Action rating 4, they are fresh. They have no support because the commanding officer decided to assemble all of their, I think these were assault guns, into a conf group here, which is represented by the dual unit back here, rather than spread them out among the battalions in the form of a support. That's not going to impact, obviously, this first term because they wouldn't have any support with no bridges across the Our. They do have one bridge down here at Gemund. However, the bridge leads to tracks, so it's not going to be a very useful bridge as far as supply goes. However, it will suffice to get any of their vehicles across. Now, their neighbor is the 2nd Panzer Division just here, just north of them. So I think what we're going to do initially with this 26th Volksgrenadier, they're going to drive westwards, kind of west-southwest. This track here leading to Hosingen on the Skyline Drive is probably going to be their right flank boundary. And then they'll proceed here past Wallhausen. The company out here at Holzturm is another objective for them initially. I don't know that they're going to be able to reach them on this first activation, so they may have to rely on a second activation to get out here. But their job is going to be to punch westward along with 2nd Panzer to try and get out here to Bastogne to the west. Depending upon how things go at Clairvaux, here, if the 2nd Panzer Division decides to bypass Clairvaux and keep driving to the west, we may have the 26th slide northward and make them responsible for clearing Clairvaux, because it sits right along this highway which heads out to the N12 here, which leads to Bastogne. So it's a nice road. It's a tough position to take, as we will see in the next couple of days. So in the meantime, 26th is getting ready to activate. They do have their trains on the map, but they are way up here with the 2nd Panzer Division, so we are definitely crossing the streams. I'm going to go ahead and activate them, and then we'll take a look at the snafu modifiers. All right, 26th Volksgrenadier is a fresh division, so that's going to give them a +1 for the snafu. They're going to get another +1 for the game specific to make it +2. They're not coordinated or mixed. They are at optimal distance, which is +3. However, they are crossing the streams, which will lower it to a +2. So a net +2 for the snafu roll for 26th Volksgrenadier. They roll an 8, which is modified to a 10, giving them a full activation. They have 3 organic artillery points along with 2 artillery asset points assigned to them. It's going to give them a total of 5 artillery points for the upcoming activation, as well as 2 objective markers. I think what we're going to do is we'll try to be a little aggressive here and see if we can make up for the lack of progress by some of the neighboring formations. We're going to split the objective markers, and we're going to place 1 on each of these companies here. And now we'll proceed to cross the river and see if we can get out here and push these guys out of the way. Let's see, he's got that, so... get there this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to go 1, 2, 3 and a half. And the 2nd Battalion of the 39th Grenadier Regiment will make an attack here on Love Company at Holzturm. And we will spend, let's see, we're going to spend 1 point for a suppression barrage. What that's going to give us on the attacking side is an action rating of 4. They are not supported, They do not have a double objective zone, but they're going to get +2 for the artillery is 6, and they are assisted for a 7. The defenders have an action rating of 4. They are supported for 5. They are beyond their HQ command radius, so no prepared defense, but they are in terrain, which gives them a 6. So we have a 7 to 6. It's a +1 on the attack table. That's a decent roll of 8. There you go. Decent roll of 8 +1 to a 9. Now that would be an attacker loss of 1 if the defender's in prepared defense, which they're not, and it is a situational retreat with traffic. So because they don't have any, because they're not in prepared defense, they do have to retreat 3 hexes and flip to their move side. They do have a safe path, and they're going to retreat towards their headquarters. So that's 1, 2, 3. We'll put them back here, and they will be flipped to their move side, which then makes them unprepared. And the 2nd of the 39th is going to enter there. And I do not have a traffic marker handy, so hold on just a minute while I grab one of those. There we are. We have the traffic marker placed here in the hex. And what the traffic marker means is that any other friendly unit entering that hex during this activation will stop and be unable to move any further. So with a successful attack here, you can see really the difference here between being in prepared defense and not being in prepared defense as far as how easy it is or difficult to push somebody out of a particular piece of ground that they are holding. Now the company up here at Hosingen is going to be in prepared defense. So this is going to be perhaps a little tougher attack, and we're going to have the Pioneers go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 1st Battalion, 77th, will go 1.5. I'll go 2.5 here, and they're going to make the attack into Hosingen. Now with this one, it's only a 2-step company here. It's King Company, so we're going to do our destruction barrage on this. We're going to spend 3 points and drop 3 points on here. Hopefully the 26th Volksgrenadier Gunners are a little better than the 5th Fallstream Jager. Let's see what we do. Well, it's 1 hit so far, and the 3rd shot is a miss. So only 1 step loss from the artillery barrage. Now we'll calculate the rest of the attack. We do have a 4 action rating. No support, no double objective zone, no artillery. +1 from the assist is a 5. And the defender will be an action rating 4. +1 supported is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, +2 for prepared defense. And are they in terrain? They are in a village. They're in terrain, so a 7. So it's a -1 on the attack. Now they can still take the hex because there's only 1 step remaining in that company if they can roll an 8 on the dice or better. Instead, they roll a 4, -1 is a 3. That's going to be 2 step losses to the 1st Battalion of the 77th. So not a real good start for the Germans with their attacks here today. And even if we had, let's say we had not done the destruction barrage, if we had the +2 modifier, that would have saved us 1 step loss, but we still wouldn't have inflicted any losses here on the company there. So as it is, we've managed to take 2 step losses in exchange for killing 1 step of the American company. Not a good exchange ratio by any stretch of the imagination. Now we've got a couple more infantry units we can get across the river here. That's 1, 2.5. And these Pioneers, where will they cross? They'll go 1. Yep, that's 1, 2, 3, and down here to the crossroads for 4. Back here we've got what is this? A couple of infantry battalions. 1, 2, 3.5. He's going to go a half. He'll just go 1, 2, 3. We will move 1, 2. Move our vehicles up here to the bridge at Gmund and wait for that to open tomorrow. And finally, this ersatz battalion. 1, 2, 3. Can we do, say, 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the infantry or the HQ here. That's going to give us a command radius of 10. Is there anything we can do about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? We're going to go ahead and move the trains as well. We're going to bring them forward because crossing the streams only applies between the HQ and the trains themselves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We place them here, and the train can continue tracing along that road. So we're basically just shifting everything. Let's see here. We've moved our trains up here from the headquarters, and then the trains can continue tracing then back along here. So we've moved most of the vehicular traffic for the 26th out of this area. We brought it forward here, and that'll help. Now we just have to straighten out 2nd Panzer and 560th Volksgrenadier at some point tomorrow. I'll do a little cleanup here. There is no isolation effects for the 26 Volksgrenadier units. We'll remove the traffic marker as well. And we made 2 attacks, so a 3 or less to lose their fresh status. Not a good start for the Germans at all. That fresh becomes a 0, which is going to make it a little bit harder to get a 2nd activation. They have a 4 or more. They do, however, get a 2nd activation, so we'll see what the 2nd activation looks like here. As I was looking over things for the 2nd activation, I noticed that I had moved this Pioneer Battalion here that starts in Gmund. And the Pioneer Battalion, unfortunately, belongs to Panzer Lehr, not the 26th Volksgrenadier. And I do that all the time with this unit because it sets up immediately adjacent to the rest of the 26th Volksgrenadier, and there's a couple of hex gap between this battalion and the rest of its formation. If I'm not looking at it very closely, I will end up assuming it's part of the 26th and end up moving it. So as a result of that, we have had to shift the headquarters and the Vorauskampfgruppe from their southerly move. We've moved them instead north to queue up here behind 2nd Panzer to get across this bridge at Dassburg when it opens next turn. I've also moved the combat trains, shifted them a little bit. They're a little bit further south now to make sure that they have that optimal distance from the headquarters. And the Pioneer Battalion here for Lehr is obviously they're in the process of throwing a bridge across the Our here, which is why they are forward, but it can be a little irritating. I just wanted to discuss the what had happened here because it's going to look a little different from the first activation where we left off. And that is also why in later games in the BCS series, they have added colored stripes to the formations in order to prevent things like this happening. So normally I'm pretty good about doing that, but for some reason, this guy here always seems to catch me out. That said, let's get on with the snafu roll for the 2nd activation. They have 26 Volksgrenadier is now 0 level fatigue, so that's going to be a 0. They get +1 for the game specific. They get +1 for the optimal distance. That'll bring them up to a +2. However, the trains are in ghost mode, which lowers it to a +1. They will need a 6 or better on the dice to get a full activation. And they do that with ease. The full activation now, that will give them 2 objective markers, which they will place, as well as all 5 artillery points. And we're going to go ahead and really concentrate. We need to get rid of the American company here, King Company, that's blocking the Skyline Drive. So we're going to drop both of our objective markers on there in order to get every advantage we can in the upcoming attack. So that said, I think we are actually going to start off with the attack here, and we're going to have 2nd Battalion of the 77th Grenadier Regiment try it again, assisted by the Pioneer Battalion of the 26th Division. And we are going to, the artillery was very ineffective last time. There are only 2 steps. Let's see if the luck gets a little better here. We are going to do a 3-point destruction barrage on them. Let's see, here we go. We'll roll those first. They are in prepared defense, so that'll be a 4 or better to score a hit. And they shoot much better with 2 hits, and that will eliminate both steps of the American company, clearing the road as the 2nd Battalion finally gets control of Hosingen. Now, that'll free up a little bit of movement for the rest of the division, and we're going to have the battalions down here pursue Love Company that they attacked last activation. Here, and he's going to go 1. Let's see, 1. All right, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. In an effort to surround the fleeing Americans there. And then the rest of the infantry will try to cross now. We've got, I'm gonna go 2, 3, 4. That's, no, actually I take that back. Second activation, they do have to pay the river cost now, so that will, we're gonna do this, we'll go, that's 3, 4. I guess we'll put him here, and we're gonna leave the Pioneer Battalion there this time. I think, you know what, I'm gonna bring this guy back. Problem with putting him, advancing him up there as much as I'd like to, with our headquarters here, we've got to be cognizant of the formation blob, and with the battalion going here, that's going to end up mixing just a little bit with the 2nd Panzer Division, and we really want to avoid that. So I could actually fix that by bringing both of these units back back down a little bit here, but that's going to ghost our trains. So yeah, we're kind of stuck where we are here. If I could shift the headquarters further south to avoid that. The problem then is the trains would not be at optimal distance. They would remain ghosted, and we don't necessarily want to do that. So we will forego the big pursuit and keep the formation in this narrow area for now. It's kind of an example of what I was referring to earlier about being a little more disciplined about where you're moving your units, and to have an idea of the boundaries you want to set them in. Initially, it was going to be this track running west here, and we want the division to stay south of Draufel. So I got a little too enthusiastic in my efforts to push westward, and it could have resulted in some coordination and mixing, which would be a -2 on the snafu for 2 of the formations that we really don't want any negative snafu modifiers on, especially for next turn on the 17th. So that done, I don't think there's anything else we can attack here. We've moved our infantry. These guys are still stuck waiting for the bridge to open, and I think that's going to do it. The only thing remaining is a fatigue check, which, since we made an attack, is going to be a 3 or less. And they rolled the 3, which is going to increase their fatigue. to a fatigue level of 1. And that is going to do it for the 26th Volksgrenadier. Both activations, they've increased their fatigue. They did at least manage to open up here. I really would not call this a breakthrough yet, but if they can, I was hoping they would get at least to the Clare River over here in the west on the first day. So again, a somewhat disappointing first day for one of the better German formations. Now we will just continue moving further north up the line, and we'll see which formation we'll activate next. The next formation we are going to activate, or rather try to activate, is going to be the 116th Panzer Division here. Now, as you can see, it starts used. It requires a 4 or better to get a second activation. However, it is fresh, which means we'll get a +1 on this roll, so a roll of 3 or better will allow them to get their second activation. And the roll is a 4, so they are active. And let's take a look at their snafu now. They have their trains on the map over here. They are tracing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's within optimal distance, and it looks like they are no longer crossing the streams because the 560th Volksgrenadier was able to shift their trains forward, and the 2nd Panzers tracing along the road up to Artsfeld, but not beyond there. So that'll be a +1 for fresh, +1 for the game specific, gives them a +2. Optimal distance is +3. The trains are not ghosted, we're not crossing the stream, so a +3 on the snafu roll. A 6 becomes a 9, which is a full activation. They are going to use both of their objective markers on this battalion here. And the objective for 116th Panzer today is to capture the crossing here at Berg Royland. So the problem is we've got 2 battalions on the road between them and the bridge. The 1st battalion here is the 1st battalion of the 112th. Right here, the other battalion is a battalion of the 106th. It's the southernmost battalion of that division. Now the 112th is in a prepared defense, which means getting this guy out of this hex is going to be problematic. He will have, right now he's got an action rating of 4. He's going to have support, which would be a 5. Prepared defense is 6, and he's in terrain, which would be a 7. Now, the 116th is a good unit, and their infantry unit on their deployed sides have action ratings of 4. Now, the most you're going to be able to add to that 4 would be a total of 5 on the combat chart. So, best case scenario right now, we're looking at a 9 to 7. That would be a +2 on the combat table, which means they would need to roll a 9 on the dice or better in order to force them to retreat, which is not that great. Now, if we can drop their support, which we should be able to do, that will lower their combat table modifier to a 6, which would give us a +3. Still, that's an 8 or better in order to get these guys out of the position. The other alternative is to eliminate all the steps. The problem is there are 6 steps in the hex here, and that and on the combat table you can really only kill 2 steps with any single attack. So we're going to have to get a little creative here and or dedicate quite a bit of resources to removing the 1st Battalion here at Lutzkampen, or we could just get lucky with the dice. So with that in mind, I think what we will do is let's go ahead and start off with the with the Panzers. And we're going to place the 2nd Battalion into its deployed mode. You'll see that increased the AV from 3 to 4. They are a 4 action rating as well. So with that, we'll move him 1, 2, 3. He has now entered an AV ZOC exerted by the U.S. battalion here. That's because they have, what do they have? They have 1 step of towed tank destroyer support, and it is limited support. So the Panzer battalion, since it's only a support AV ZOC, can choose to just stop here, and he doesn't have to make an engagement. However, the whole purpose we brought him forward was to engage the support to try to drop it. So we will fight an engagement with his first fire event, and it's going to be 4 AV plus 4. Action rating is an 8, and they get a +1 because they are in a double objective zone for a total of 9. From that, we'll subtract the 4 action rating and the 3 AV of the support, which is a 7. That's going to give them a +2 on the engagement table with target is support line. They roll a 6, +2 is 8, and that indicates that the target support is dropped. So I'm going to place a, there he is, temporary support dropped marker. Now, with the support dropped, that eliminates the AV ZOC, which means the Panzer could continue moving in theory, but we don't want to do that. Instead, we're going to use his 2nd fire event to attack by fire the troops here. Essentially, it's an attack on the barrage table. And they are in prepared defense, so a 4, 5, or 6 will kill 1 step. And they're doing their job. They roll the 4. That is going to eliminate 1 step from the American battalion. I'm going to take a second and update the loss chart for that, and then we will continue with the activation. All right, having marked the loss charts, you'll see I also went ahead and marked the Panzer Battalion as stopped. Anytime an AV unit uses both of its fire events, it is then considered to be stopped, which is not finished, so they can still assist any attack here or spot for an artillery barrage. And so I've just marked them stopped to remind me of that. Now we will go ahead and activate the 1st Battalion here. We're going to leave them on their move mode. The 16 movement points have 4 subtracted because of the special rule, so they've got 12 to spend, and they'll go 1, 2.5, and go 5.5 here. And they are going to stop and also take 2 shots. They're going to use both of their fire events to attack by fire the... do they want to do that? I think they do. Let's see. That's going to be 2, and yeah, that's fine. I'll probably regret this, but we're going to use both fire events to try and inflict a couple more step losses on the battalion there. And they managed to roll a 4 and a 5, so that will be 2 more step losses, and that will stop the 1st Panzer Battalion as well. So they've now managed to reduce the battalion here to half strength with only 3 steps remaining. It's now time to launch the assault with the infantry now. So we're going to go ahead and flip this 1st Battalion of the 156th over to his deployed side. He'll go 1.5, and he is going to make the attack here. Now 116th Panzer has 2 additional artillery points assigned to them, which gives them a total of 5. They also have some very good red support. They've got a battalion of Jagdpanzer. So the way this attack shapes up, the Americans we've already talked about are going to have +1 for prepared defense and +1 for terrain. They do not get the support modifier since the tanks dropped that. That's going to give them a 6 on the defensive side. For the attacker, they've got an action rating of 4. They do have red support, which will make it a 5. They are in a double objective zone, which makes it 6. They're assisted by the Panzer Battalion below them, which will bring it up to a 7, and which would be a +1 right now. If we use 1 die here, that will give us, for a suppression barrage, that will give us a 9. That's going to be a +3. So really it comes down to an 8 or better in order to move these guys off of the road. If not, the 116th Panzer is going to be short of their objective for the day. So let's see how it goes here. 8 or better. Well, with the flare for the dramatic, they got the 8 they need. That's going to be +3, which makes it an 11 on the combat table. That result is a D1, so the battalion will take another step loss and a mandatory retreat. And with the mandatory retreat, the unit will retreat all the way back to its HQ refuge, which will be in or adjacent to the HQ hex. I will go ahead and we'll put them actually in the HQ's hex for now, since there's no other units there. And that will allow the 1st Battalion to clear the road here at Lutzkampen. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and update the loss charts there for the 1st Battalion, and then we'll pick back up with the rest of the activation. All right, with the 1st American roadblock cleared here at the crossroads, the action is going to shift a little bit to the north here. And next along the road is the 2nd Battalion of the 424th of 106th Infantry Division. Now, they are more than 10 hexes from their headquarters, which is way up here in St. Vith. So being outside of command range, they are not eligible to receive any of the prepared defense benefits. They are still, however, they do have support. So we're going to bring up some infantry here. And we're going to have this battalion go 1, 2, and we'll bring up the 2nd Battalion along the road here, 1, 2, and the 2nd Battalion of the 156th is now going to make an attack on the Americans. We are going to spend 1 artillery point in a suppression mission. We have an action rating of 4. Action rating 4. They do have red support, that makes it a 5. Double objective zone is 6. Suppression barrage 7, 8, and then they are assisted by the 2nd Battalion of the 60th for a total of 9. The Americans have an action rating of 2. They have support, makes it 3, and they are in terrain, which makes it a 4. So it's a 9 minus 4. It's a +5 to the attack. This is one of the better attacks that the Germans have been able to make all day. That +5, they rolled a 7. That makes it a 12. That's going to be a defender 1-step loss and a mandatory retreat, which is going to send them all the way back up to the HQ refuge in St. Vith, and we'll put them right there just to the west of the town. And now the 2nd Battalion enters the hex. So, unlike most of the other German formations, 116th Panzer seems to have their act together today and have successfully cleared their road. And I think they had a good attack at +5, but I hope you'll see, or are beginning to see, what a big difference prepared defense versus not being in prepared defense makes as far as holding ground. Now, prepared defense does have some downsides, so it's not a magic bullet. But for the Americans, or for anyone on the defensive, and you want to hold ground, prepared defense is going to enable you to do that, but at the cost of some casualties. So now we've got the road open to the bridge. The bridge is a victory point hex. That's what the white star indicates here. It's an American victory point hex. In order to enter a victory point hex, it needs to be within an objective zone, which it currently is not. Now, we've used both of our markers here for the attacks. However, we have a recon unit here, for the 116th. It's a very good one, and he is going to use a fire event 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. He's going to stop and use his first fire event to place an objective marker. It's a recon objective marker in this hex. To do that, he needs to roll equal to or less than his action rating, which you can see is a 5. So anything but a 6, and he'll place the marker. And of course, Murphy says it's a 6. So we are going to, actually, before I do that, before I even attempt to do that, we'll keep that 6. You see a little demolition symbol here. This bridge and every bridge with this symbol needs to roll to see if it's blown or if it's going to be captured intact the instant any German unit moves next to it for the very first time in the game. So normally it's a 1d6 roll. On a 1 or a 2, the bridge is okay. On a 3 or higher, it's blown. The Germans in this campaign are given 5 Greif team markers. And these markers represent kind of the special forces that the Germans had sent ahead. And you can expend 1 Greif team marker to change the roll. Basically, it subtracts 2 from the die roll to check the bridge. So on a 1 through 4, with 1 Greif team, the bridge is okay. 5 or 6, it's destroyed. You can spend 2 Greif teams to automatically capture the bridge. Now with 5 of them, there are a ton of bridges. You can see there's another one here, there's another one here. Basically all the bridges across the Meuse to the west have the same symbol. My philosophy is, if the bridge is important enough to use 1 Greif team on, it's important enough to use 2 Greif teams on. So with that, we are going to expend two of our Greif teams here. Expend 2 of those to capture this bridge intact. I think this bridge is possibly the most important bridge in the game, and we can discuss that in length or in detail as we continue with the playthrough and you see what's happening. Or maybe I'll just do a separate video kind of focusing on some of what I think the best strategies of the game are. So having grabbed the bridge with the 2 Greif teams, we have failed to place an objective marker here with our first fire event. We're going to go ahead and expend the second fire event to place an objective marker in there. So again, anything but a 6, and this one is a 4. So with that, I will place an objective marker there. Which means the Germans can then enter the hex. However, that was the Kampfgroup's second fire event, which means they're stopped. So we'll get the expended Greif teams out of here. And the die. Fortunately, they have a Panzer Grenadier battalion here, which will go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I have to be careful with the command radius of the division, and I am going to move the headquarters forward. The trains are still way back here, and the question is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I can get the headquarters to Lutzkampen, which I guess we'll go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3. We'll go here. That's still within optimal distance of the trains, and it will cover 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That should be far enough out that we're going to need, certainly for this turn. Go ahead and place the Pioneer Battalion here as well. Now, unfortunately, in their move mode, they are unprepared, as you can see by the absence of either an AV or an arrow, but they cannot reach it on their deployed side, and they're the last unit we have. So, overall, the 116th did achieve their objective of grabbing Berg-Royland here, and they have pushed a Panzer Grenadier Battalion as far west as the highway south of Saint-Vit. So, a successful activation by the 116th. It's a real pity that that they were already used, because a second activation for them on this turn would be pretty spectacular. But it's not to be, so we will move into the cleanup, and then we will make the all-important fatigue roll. Because they are fresh, if they do manage to increase their fatigue, that will be a bit of a blow, simply because it will take away that nice snafu modifier, as well as making it more difficult to get second activations in the future. So here we go. 3 or less because they made an attack. And they rolled a 4, so they retain their fresh status, which is another excellent thing. So I would say, if you're keeping score at home, 116th Panzer, well, it's not quite a home run, certainly not a grand slam, but maybe an RBI triple. And they certainly have performed better than any of their peers so far, with the possible exception of the 18th Volksgrenadier. That's going to do it for 116th Panzer. We'll take a look and see what we want to activate next, and we'll continue on. Having finished up all of the German formations on the southern half of the front, we're now moving back into the northern half. We're still in the central sector, and we're going to go ahead and activate the 62nd Volksgrenadier Division. They are the right flank division of the 116th Panzer, which we just saw kind of tear up the road here and burst across the Our at Berg-Royland. The 62nd is going to be tasked with coming up this neighboring secondary road through Winterspelt to Steinebruck and seizing the bridge over Steinebruck, which then leads into Saint-Vit from the southeast. The bulk of the division, well, pretty much the entire division, is right here. The trains are on map, and they are off to the east. They are, however, stacked with the trains of the 18th Volksgrenadier. So that's something that we're going to look to correct here in the first activation. We're not going to put them into prepared defense, so we're going right to the snafu roll. The 62nd is fresh, so they get a +1. The game specific makes it a +2. Optimal distance +3, but they are crossing the stream, so it's a +2 to the snafu roll. They roll a 5, which +2 is a 7, and that's just what they need to get their full activation. With that, they will have their 3 organic artillery points plus the 2 artillery points that are assigned to them, for a total of 5. I'll mark that here. There we go. And they will get 2 objective markers. And they're going to place both of them right here on this mixed battalion of the 106th. Facing them are 2 battalions of the 106th. However, the southern battalion here, which is the 3rd battalion of the 424th, is outside of the command radius of the headquarters here in Saint-Vit, so it will not get any prepared defense benefits. This mixed battalion is just barely in range, so they are in prepared defense. However, it only has 2 steps. So they're going to have to figure out how are we going to open this road and push the Americans back. They do have some red support, which is nice because that's going to help with their attacks. And let's go ahead and start off with, we'll start off attacking the prepared defense unit. So we'll bring this battalion 1, 2, and then we'll have 1, 2, and the 2nd battalion of the 190th is going to be assisted by the 1st battalion here. They will make an attack on the mixed battalion, and we will use 3 artillery points again. It's not a very good battalion, but it is a small battalion with only 2 steps, so we'll try and blast them out. And if that doesn't work, then we may yet be able to destroy them, the remaining step with the combat roll. So let's see. First two shots. The first two shots are going to do it with 2 6s. That will eliminate both steps of the mixed battalion, and that will allow the second to enter the hex as part of the combat. Now, that was the most difficult attack. Now comes a slightly easier attack. Okay. All right, so we will, we'll bring the 2nd Battalion forward here. The 1st Battalion will come up, and the 1st Battalion of the 183rd Grenadier is going to make the attack, assisted by the 2nd Battalion. They're in the objective zone. We are going to spend 1 point for a suppression barrage. That's going to give us a action rating 2. We have red support is 3, double objective zone is 4, suppression 5, 6, and we are assisted for a total of 7. The Americans have an action rating of 2. They do have support, which makes it a 3. They are not in prepared defense. There is no hex-side terrain, but they are in terrain, so that's going to make it a 4. So a 7 to 4, it's a +3 on the combat table. It's an average roll of 7, becomes a 10. That's a conditional A1. Since they are not in prepared defense, there will be no loss, and it is a situational retreat and traffic. So with the situational retreat, they will retreat 3 hexes and flip into their move mode. And 1, 2, 3, they will go there. And the 1st Battalion is able to enter the hex, where we have traffic, which I guess I'll go ahead and mark it. There's almost no chance of any other unit entering that hex this turn, but we'll just be consistent and get it marked. Now, the road is clear, so we've got these guys in the back here. No real good options right now. So tell you what, we will go ahead and have the Pioneer Battalion. 1, 2, 3. Now, they were able to move past the battalion here because this battalion is unprepared. You can see there's no white assault marker and no AV value on the counter, and unprepared units do not have any zone of control. How are we going to move up the rest of these guys? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have a couple of, looks like a bicycle battalion with a Fusilier company. They're not very good, but they are fast, at least on the roads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll put him here, and we'll put him there, I think. And we will 1, 2, 3. Move the headquarters forward, and then we will also shift the trains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring the trains up, which will ghost them. And that's going to do it for the first activation of the 62nd Volksgrenadier. Before we go, though, I do have to roll for the bridge here at Steinerbrook, and I'm going to try something a little different here. A lot of times I would just go ahead and roll, and you know, if the bridge stays up, fine. If it gets blown, no big deal. But I think this time the Germans are going to spend another 2 of their 3 remaining Greif teams to seize this bridge intact. So with that done, we are expending those Greif teams, and we will take the bridge intact. I will probably, There are bridge OK and bridge blown markers. I don't know if I'll put up the bridge OK markers. I may just put the bridge blown markers on the map, again, just to keep the map clean. So let's go ahead and roll. Let's clean up the rest of the activation here. Remove the objective markers. Traffic's removed. There is no drop support markers to remove. They made actually they made 2 attacks, so a 3 or less to increase their fatigue. The roll is unfortunately a 1. That's going to drop them to a fatigue level 0. And now we're going to see if we can get a second activation. The HQ needs a 5 or 6. And they do get that 6. So a second activation for 62nd Volksgrenadier. I'm going to update the loss charts for the mixed battalion that was destroyed, and then we'll pick up with the second activation shortly. With the bookkeeping out of the way, we're ready to proceed with the 62nd's second activation. Again, the trains are on map. We have a complete MSR. We are not going into prepared defense, so our snafu roll, we have fatigue level 0. They are not mixed or coordinated. We get a +1 for the game specific. They are at optimal distance, which is a +2, but they are crossing the streams, which is going to bring it down to a net +1. And the roll is good enough with a 7 + 1 is an 8. Another full activation. That's going to give them 5 artillery points again and 2 objective markers. Now, what to do with the objective markers? We'd like to push across the Ore here at Steinebruck, but this battalion is in a prepared defense, which means it's going to be difficult to move him out of there. There is another battalion here. It's a provisional battalion of the 423rd Regiment in Blyhof. It only has 2 steps. And while the 62nd is not going to necessarily be going this way, we might be able to slide over here and make a small attack to perhaps try and clear that American unit out of there for the next turn. None of the Americans here are able to be covered by a single objective zone, so if we do want to make some multiple attacks, we're going to have to split the objective zone markers. Let's see. Perhaps they can outmaneuver him and just go around him. It's going to slow them down a bit, but let's see. We'll put 1 here and 1 here, I think. All right, now on to business. Bring him up 1, 2, 3. 2nd Battalion of the 183rd is going to make an unassisted attack on the provisional battalion, and again, this is an attempt to merely blast them out of existence with more artillery. So we're going to spend 3 artillery points in a destruction barrage. They are in terrain, which means a 4 or better. And there's 1 hit now for the last artillery, and it is a 6, so both of those worked. That's going to allow them to move into Blyhof, although in the grand scheme of things, they will be vacating that town pretty quickly, as this road here does not belong to them. So we'll keep that in mind for the 17th. Now, at the other end, there's no bridges over here. However, the Iran is merely a stream, so it's only +1 to cross over that as opposed to a +2 to cross the Ur. So I think we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And And we're going to go 2, 4, and 2 here. And then the 2nd Battalion of the 164, supported by 1st of the 183rd, is going to make an attack on the unprepared Americans here. We'll spend 1 point for a suppression barrage. We have an action rating of 2. They have red support is 3, no double objective zone. Suppression barrage is 4, 5, and assist is a 6. The Americans have an action rating of 1. They are unprepared, so they get no support, and they get no prepared defense. So they do get 1 for terrain, so that's a 2. So we have 6 to 2. It's a +4 on the combat table for the attack. It's a so-so roll of 6. That's going to be a 10. Again, it's going to be no loss to the attacker and another situational retreat and traffic. So they are chasing these guys 2, 3. And what I wanted to do and forgot to do was to slide these pioneers over. Prior to that, that would have, if I had done that prior to making the attack, they would have had to take a step loss on their retreat. As it is, I got a little ahead of myself, and we can't afford to do that. So this battalion will move up here. We'll flip these guys. Actually, we have here. One and a half, 2.5 here. Flip these guys and one. Yep, I don't want to get them too out of control here. We will bring up 1, 2 here. They're done. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, we'll just move the headquarters into Winterspout. And the trains are at optimal distance, so we can flip those over at the end of the action. And I think that's going to do it for the second activation of the 62nd. Again, they made an attack, so 2 attacks, so 3 or less. And they do, in fact, roll that 3. So the Germans are doing a pretty good job of tiring themselves out on this first day. And you will find that in this game, that sometimes the fatigue really mounts pretty quickly, and at other times units will stay at fresh or fatigue level 0 for, it seems like, days. All right, that's it for 62nd. With that done, we will continue moving along and see what we have left. Now the Germans have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 formations left to activate, and of those, there's only 1 that's on the front lines. That's the 277th Volksgrenadier. We will probably be going to them next. The remaining 4 are the 12th SS that you can see here, Kampfgruppe Piper and 1st SS, which are coming in here, and then the 150th Panzer Brigade, which as a reinforcement is showing up a little bit further to the south. And I'm going to hold off on doing the SS and 150th Panzer. We'll do those later. So we will do the 277th now. I wanted to kind of discuss what's going on here as far as the Germans are concerned. Now, the historical plan was for 277th Volksgrenadier to blast through the 99th Infantry Division's defenses here and drive west. You can see there is a secondary road that runs right along the front line here, and it comes down and intersects into the main highway here. Having seen the difficulty that formations like 12th Volksgrenadier and certainly the 7th Army divisions down on the southern flank have had in taking any positions held by units in prepared defense, I'm not very optimistic about 277th being able to do that. Certainly not nearly as optimistic as the German generals were. So what I'm going to try to do, I would like to give this road right here to 12th SS. There are a couple of tracks through the Hansfelderwald that lead to the Twin Villages. And I think we're going to have 12th SS come, and I'd much rather have 12th SS try to attack this position than 277th. As we saw with 116th Panzer, if you dedicate enough resources, you can take a prepared defense position, but those resources are beyond what the 277th has. 12th SS is one of the more powerful German formations in the game, with plenty of striking power. The problem is I can't just run 12th SS right over the top of 277th. They'll be mixed, they'll be coordinated, it'll be a real nightmare trying to get them to do anything. So we're gonna have the 277th kind of do a sidestep, if you will. And that works out in a couple of ways. You've got this primary road here in the north that we would like to essentially put the 277th's trains on, which will clear this road for the 12th SS trains without crossing the streams. Also, it will allow the 326th Volksgrenadier, the small formation here, to shift these units westwards and allow them to kind of consolidate their position and be able to apply a little more pressure out to the west here, as 277th, their axis of attack, instead of coming due west, we're going to shift them a little bit to the north and try to have them come in from the northeast, attacking on a southwest, and then clear the way, really is what we're trying to do for the 12th SS to come in here and hopefully just kind of steamroll this whole position here. So with that said, we'll go ahead and activate the 277th. And the trains, as you can see, are right here at optimal distance. They're not crossing any streams. They are they fresh? Yes, they are fresh. So they're gonna get a +1 for fresh on their snafu. They're gonna get a +1 for the game specific, which makes it +2. They're at optimal distance for +3. So that's all that applies, a +3 for the snafu roll. And they roll a 5, which isn't great, but it does give them an 8 thanks to their modifiers and a full activation. So the 277th has 3 organic artillery points and no artillery asset attached to them. They do, however, have red AV support, so they will get support on their attacks. Now, I'm going to take a couple minutes and look this over rather than having you guys sit here and watch me hem and haw. We'll take a little break. Once we get the 277th kind of figured out here, we'll pick back up. All right, having looked over the 277th's options, you can see what we've done is we're shifting the division here. I've left the headquarters and the trains in place, and they will make the jump on the next activation they get up to the primary road up here. Now you'll notice I did not place any objective markers, and that's because we're not going to make any attacks. The only attack that they could make would be here on the engineers, and we don't want to risk losing our fresh status simply for that. If we don't place any objective markers, and we don't make any other qualifying fatigue actions, then there is no fatigue roll, which means we will go ahead and maintain our fresh status at the end of this activation. We clean this up. Now, that fresh will give us a +1. We only get a second activation on a 6 or better, but now, thanks to the fresh status, that's a 5 or 6. And we are going to try and get that second activation because we'll be in a position here to make a better attack and to actually kind of complete the shift of the division to the north here. So on a 5 or 6, they're in business. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait till the 17th. And because of the fresh, that 5 means they do get that second activation. Now that means we're going to have to roll for fatigue. Even if we do nothing other than move, we still have a 1 or 2 to increase the fatigue. So with that in mind, we'll have our 3 artillery points. We are going to go ahead and make an attack here on the engineers. Just because I don't have a lot of faith in the offensive capability of the division doesn't mean that it's not capable of giving some assistance to the real divisions in the army. So let's see how we're going to do this. Let's go ahead and we'll get the attack out of the way first. That's 2, 4, and the 2nd Battalion of the 989th make the attack, assisted by the 1st Battalion here. We are going to spend 1 artillery point for suppression. We have a 2 action rating. They are supported with red support is 3. They're in a double objective zone is 4, 5, 6 for the artillery, and 7 for the assist. The American 99th Engineers have an action rating of 2. They do have support, which is 3. They are in prepared defense is 4, and they are in terrain 5. So a 7 minus 5 is a net plus 2 on the combat table. We're going to need a 9 or better on the dice in order to take the hex. And that's just what the doctor ordered there. So a 9 becomes an 11. That is a D1 and an automatic retreat. So what we do here, that's going to inflict 1 step loss on the engineers. They are going to retreat to their HQ refuge. We'll put them adjacent. Actually, there's no one in the hex yet. Let's go ahead and put them in the twin villages there. And it will allow the 2nd Battalion to advance. So perhaps my concerns about the offensive capabilities of this division were a little exaggerated. Let's see, we will continue to 4, and want to be careful not to mix with the 326th here. So we're gonna kind of hold, we're gonna stay south of the road here with our combat units. Let's go ahead and 1, 2, 3. Let's see, 1, 2. Put them there. The Pioneers. 2, 3. Bring these guys. 1, 2, 4. Now the headquarters. Let's see. That's going to be a problem with a 6 command radius. I don't think 1, 2 and a half, 3, 4 and a half, 6 and a half, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the headquarters is going to have to redeploy going 1, 2 and a half. 3 and a half, 4 and a half, 5 and a half, 6 and a half, 7 and a half. That's going to put us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so he's going to be all right. He'll be covered. These guys, 2, 3, 2, 4. And then we are going to shift our trains as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put them on the road there. And that gives us a formation blob right here. We'll be able to take over the positions around Heartbreak Crossroads. Next activation from the 326th. We did manage to poke a little hole here in the 99th lines. So overall, a fairly productive turn for the 277th. A little surprised at that. Clean this up. Let's roll for fatigue. Now with that 1 attack, it's going to be a 3 or less. And they do pay the price for their exertions and lose their fresh status, which brings them to fatigue level 0. That's going to wrap it up for the 277th. And we continue on. Now the remaining 4 German formations are composed of the 1st SS Corps here and the 150th Panzer Brigade. None of them will be engaged really in any combat with the activations this turn. As a matter of fact, all 4 formations, as you can see, are used. So we're going to have to roll just to see if they even can get that 2nd activation and move. Since the only thing they're going to be doing is moving, if indeed they even get to do that, rather than sit there and make you guys watch me simply count over and over again, I'm going to go ahead and run through their activations, and once I've completed that, we'll pick back up again, and I'll just give you an update on where they ended up. All right, 12th SS here, passed their roll, got an activation, and moved up the road here. You can see they've kind of split the division into two battle groups, and they're moving into the spot in the line vacated by the 277th. On the 17th, they're going to look to attack across these two tracks here towards the twin villages and look to exploit as far to the west as they can, maybe clearing the Elsenborn Ridge area. They did retain their fresh status. Comp Group Piper, he rolled a 1, did not activate. I guess he's oversleeping this morning. However, the rest of the 1st SS Division did activate, and you see they've moved down the roads here. They've pulled up right behind 12th Volksgrenadier. They are basically waiting for this area to clear out so that they can push through, probably heading down towards Saint-Vite or perhaps westwards along the highway here. And then finally, we have the 150th Panzer Brigade. This was Scorzeni's unit. It's a small unit, 3 battalions, but they are fast and motorized. So they entered here at Area B and are being assigned probably to the central sector over here. It's going to open up, I think, down here sooner than it will in the north, and there's quite a bit of congestion up in this area. So being a fast mobile unit, we'll send them to the center, perhaps even to the south down here to either exploit some of the breakthroughs or maybe lend an assist to some of the 7th Army infantry divisions that are having difficulties making any progress. And that is going to wrap it up for the 16th of December. There's just some minor administrative stuff here to reset for the next turn, but that's going to do it for today and the 16th of December. Turn 1 is in the books. Overall, I would say, based on previous experience, this was a mediocre to poor day for the Germans, but there are some reasons for optimism, namely, right here in the 116th Panzers sector. This is what I would consider to be the only true breakthrough of the day. Further north, we do have the 106th still trapped on the Schnee Eifel. There's a possibility here of really taking out much of that division. And again, it's still the goal to try to take Saint-Vite on the 17th. And we'll see how that unfolds. The further north we go, the 12th Volksgrenadier had a very disappointing day here, unable to really break through at all. They put a little dent in the line, but it was quickly sealed. And the 277th of all formations managed to punch a little hole here, and we'll see if they are able to take advantage of that at all. There's an opportunity here for them to kind of swing in and maybe cut off the 2nd Infantry Division troops up here. 12th SS, again, moving into position. On the southern side, it was a bad day all around. None of the 7th Army divisions, particularly the 5th Fallstream, managed to achieve anything of note. The 26th Volksgrenadier did punch through. It's not quite a breakthrough, but it should turn into one here on the 17th. And when the bridge comes down here, or when the bridge goes up at Dasburg, we can expect to see 2nd Panzer as well as Panzerlehr unleashed into the west. So the 17th is shaping up to be a very critical day for the German prospects as far as getting the 2nd and 9th SS off of the map up here. On the American side, there's a lot of impending crises on the way, but I think the American has to be reasonably happy with how this first day went. The 99th Division is still in a good situation here. They've got this main road still clogged up with this battalion and these 2 battalions here. The 106th, yes, it's cut off here, but they haven't suffered very many step losses yet. There may be an opportunity to somehow get at least a few of these guys out of the situation they're in, and there are reinforcements on the way. Probably the most critical sector, again, is down here around the 112th and the 110th. We'll see if CCR from the 9th Armored Division here can do anything to blunt the advances of the Germans, either up here at Berg-Reuland or down in the Dasburg area. 4th Infantry Division is holding on. The situation is a little critical, but they will get some reinforcements here shortly. CCA of the 9th down here is in danger of being completely overwhelmed just by sheer numbers. But the situation will hopefully improve there. And to the west there, 109th, they're holding firm right now, but again, just sheer weight of numbers is going to make that situation go from bad to worse. So it's another typical, exciting, interesting last Blitzkrieg game. We'll see how things pick up here on day 2, if the Germans can start to build some momentum and make some real breakthroughs, or if the offensive is going to be dead in its tracks. Thanks for watching today. Hope you're enjoying this. Again, any questions or comments, put them down below and I will be sure to answer them. And we